Okay, welcome back. Not doing a live painting session now. I'm going to actually do a little test and do this as a video, so I might stop at some point and actually cut in and out of things. But this painting I've done a bit more since the last video I've done, and really I've only got one more session, one more sitting to do with it, which I will share with you guys. But it got me thinking about actually getting it off the board and getting it off the paper. Now, if you've been watching the videos of me working on this, you'll have seen me complaining about the lifting of the masking tape. Now, I actually put this on the board and penciled it out about a year ago. It just goes to show how sort of busy I've been to be able to not get back to actually do it. But it became apparent when I was doing this that if I was going to start some more drawings, which was my plan, that maybe masking tape wasn't the best idea. Now, this tape I've used on this paper is a low tack variety of masking tape, which means it comes up a lot easier than your common garden one, which is probably why it's lifted here. Now, in the past, whenever I've painted pictures, and I've done a lot of work on paper, I like working on paper, what I've tended to do is mask off the paper, do the painting, like as I've done here, and then actually create a border around the masking tape, just like a thin black line or something. I just think it makes it look crisp and tidy. That's my preference for it. Probably again goes back to my sort of learning to draw from comic books and that, but there we go. That's what I like doing. So I was thinking about how I was going to do this one, because this is, I've not used watercolour like this before, and I don't think I've used watercolour and ink in this way before. So I've been thinking about how I was going to do that, and then I was also thinking about the next pieces, which a couple of weeks ago I got a couple of nice MDF drawing boards and paper, and put the paper on, stretched the paper in the old-fashioned method using gum strips, which I'll show you now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this one away. So here's one of the other drawing boards I got, and this is the sort of experiment I've been doing. Now, this bit of paper covers a couple of different experiments I want to try. First up, I'm comparing a couple of masking tapes. I've got cheap masking tape and low tack masking tape as I've used in the other picture. And also, because I've been doing a bit of reading, it was easy getting this gum tape onto the board, but then I just assumed you'd wet the paper, you'd wet the strips of tape again with a sponge, peel them off, and they'd come off easy. But apparently, if they're on paper, everything I've been reading since says you have to cut them off, and I don't want to cut because that would mean I lose my border, and if I masked in a new border with masking tape, then that's going to be using up a lot of paper and giving me a smaller area to work in. So I got a couple of concerns about what I want to do. I'll show you now some of my older works, just so you can see what I mean by the board around the image, and they should, because this is not live, this is a recording, I will put them on top in the edit, just to show you a few things. And if you look at these pieces, these were just done in a sketchbook, and they have the border on them that I like putting. Sometimes it's rough, sometimes it works nice, and a couple of my bigger paintings as well, I put a border on the ones on paper. I did some really big sheets with acrylic, God, 25 years ago. Well, not quite, no, 23. But it's just something I like with the presentation. I've got an office full of screen prints that I sort of collect, and I like a nice crisp border on them. So yeah, so here's my paper now. You've seen them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the marks of the masking tape. Now you'll see I've written loads of stuff. That's just to remind myself what each of these different bits of tape are. Try and get that bit straight for you. So first up, I've created what I did, I stretched up two boards, two bits of paper on two boards, and I stretched them so they're all nice. And I thought, earlier today, I thought, well, if I'm going to start drawing these new pictures, and I've done it this way with the tape, what happens when I come to get them off if, after what I read last night is true, this tape doesn't come off easily? So I thought, well, I don't want to cut them out because then I lose the border, because my border's created, the paper is within the tape, so that for me the tape creates the border, the white border around the image. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to sacrifice one of these bits of paper just to test and see what I can do. So that's what I've done here today, and I've just put down loads of different washes of colour, different bits of ink, because I wanted to see the different thicknesses. Now, one thing I was thinking is I could make my own border by masking inside the image. So I've taped over parts of the painting, and I want to see if lifting these off the actual painting does any damage to the painting underneath, because if it does, then I can't use that as a method for doing my border. So we'll look at the masking tape first, and once we've done the masking tape and peeled them all off, that'll be like Christmas this with the advent calendars. Once we've done that, what I'm going to do for you then is see about getting this brown paper off, the gummed paper, and see if it's as tricky as what I've said it is. And if it ruins the paper, then I'll have to forget this method of doing it and throw out the other one I've stretched up and go back to masking tape. Now the paper I've been watercolouring on is quite heavy duty paper, it's something like 350 grams per square metre, so it's thick and it shouldn't buckle on its own, but as we've seen with the other picture, it does buckle. But then again, maybe that's because the tape's lifted because it was low tack. So there's a few unknowns for me. I don't claim to be an expert in this stuff. This is new to me. I'm sure there's cleverer people out there who could answer these questions straight away, but I'm figuring them out for myself. I'm showing you guys as well, so you can enjoy it. I'm actually quite looking forward to taking off these bits of tape to see what they've done. So let's start. Where will we start? We're going to start with the low tack tape. I'll just show you what I got. Yeah, you can see that I got this roller tape that I bought. Where did I buy it? I bought it online. It was a bit pricier than normal tape because it's low tack, so it's specifically made for art use, for not damaging the surface when you lift it off things. And then today I went out and I bought some of this stuff, which is typically what I'd always used in the past. Bog standard cheap masking tape. Now this was £1 for a thick 25 metre roll, and I would have used this without thinking about it before. On a reading around today as well, I see maybe there's some issues with the residue, but I've got paintings that are 20 years old that I masked down and there's no sign of any damage to the paper, so I just have to assume that that's people being extra cautious. So first things first, I want to look at this line here. Now this is my border line that I've put round using a taped on the inside method, so I've got a very fine, it should be close to parallel line, and that is black ink with brush, and this is the low tack tape. So I'm going to see if I can lift this, if it does A, any damage to the paint underneath, and B, if there's any seepage through the tape onto it. So here we go, let's see if I can get this first one up and running. Get them started. Right. Let's see. So it looks like a good line. I've also done some. I tried a couple of different markers. So I got this one, which is what I'm calling my Bic marker, which is like a chisel-shaped thing. And then I use this one, which is a Pentel marker, which is more of a bullet point. So around the outside of this, I did a freehand with the Pentel bullet point just to see what sort of line it gives. So we got two lines to look at here. Right, so the paint's lifting off. It's coming off nice. It's not damaging the paint, and it's giving me a nice good line here. It's just lifted some of the ink there. Let's keep going. Yeah, look, it's lifting the ink. So this is the low tack tape. So if this is the low tack tape, I don't want to think about what it's going to do with the cheap one. off the paint. So that's basically put pay to that idea of creating an inner line. Stick that over there. So yeah, that's put pay to the idea of creating an inner line by using a layer of tape inside the outer frame. So yeah, it's lifted, that's affected the ink. Hasn't affected the watercolour so much. But no, if I use ink, then that's no good. Damage done. So also there's been a lot of bleed under the tape, so this is after pushing it down quite thoroughly. Sorry, bit of noise there with the tape. So after pushing it down thoroughly, really setting it and filling in the gap, it's bled there. It was a quite nice line that way. The marker line's not much better either, to be honest. So that's the low tack. We got another low tack one here, so we might as well do that because I wanted to see what it was like with a painted border rather than ink or felt. Right, so that's me, I've damaged the bit there. Right, so up it comes. Now that one seems a bit better. It doesn't seem to have lifted the ink. It doesn't seem to have done any damage to the underlying paint. But again, there's lots of bleed around the edge. That doesn't look tidy, does it? So that's a fail as well. So the low tack tape doesn't make a great border, which now has me worrying about what this one's going to look like when I take it up. The one I showed you at the start of the video. Okay, so that's that. So we've done paint there, so we're going to do paint. So this is the cheap masking tape with the painted edge on it. So God knows what this one's going to be like. Here we go. Let's get the corner there. Ooh, I can hear it. Eek. So that's done a lot of damage to the paint there. So I can't use that. And again, the edge is not much cop. I'm just going to cut this one here because tape goes underneath. So this is with the Bic wedge marker, freehand line on the, no, that's not the cheap, that's the low tack. I'm telling myself fibs. And so this is the low tack, so no damage to the paper. Sides are quite messy, so there's been a lot of bleed under the masking tape. So right, so another cheap one, happy smiley face, I don't know why, I was just doodling. So this one is the cheap masking tape with the Pentel pen round the edge, freehand. Ugh, you know when you start peeling if it's going to damage it, and the sound it makes, and that just made the sound like ugh. Yeah, look, it's lifting loads of the paint. Ugh. I don't know if you can see that there. That shouldn't be there. That's taking the top layer of paint and everything off, and yeah. So that's cheap paint is no good inside the frame either. So let's just do this big one up here. No, hang on, do this one. So this is more felt. Let's see what happens with this one. Bang! Look at that. Loads of damage. Can you see that there? The white stripes. And I don't mean the band, that's basically the tape has pulled it off. The tape has got noticeable ridges on it. So cheap tape, not much good, so we'll do this big one up here now. Now, how did I do this top border? The border along here now is ink. See, I've written it down there, it should be easier there. Ink with the cheap thing, so I've tried to do the same sort of border I've done down here. So you'll see like here that I'm on the tape, so let's see what the bleed's like on this, because although it might not work on the painted side, if I mask it down on the paper side then it might be alright. So that's a good crisp line. Yeah, we know it's pulling up the paint. Good crisp line. Oh, this is satisfying. Love doing this. Except when that happens, see, so there's lots of damage to the paint. So you can use this kind of masking tape on the paint. There you go. Another Mr. Smiley face. So that's done quite a lot of damage. So that's our masking tape done anyway. So we've done all the masking tape now. So I think the theory is, sorry for the shake, the theory is we don't use any masking tape on the watercolour surface because it has made lots of damage. So that's only half the battle. The other battle now is getting the tape off. The brown tape, gummed tape. So in theory that should give us a nice line. I can't tell how good my border lines are until I take this paper off. And if it doesn't come off, we've had it. Now this side I've just used the bullet pen, the Pentel one, freehand. Used a bit of ruler here, a bit of freehand. So we'll see now. The plan is, I've got myself a sponge, show you up there, down here, up there. Got myself some water, and I go very gently, trying not to get into the image, close that up. Soak this paper enough, I'll just move it slightly, sorry. Soak this paper enough without going into the image to get it off. I've got a feeling this isn't going to work, is it? We'll see. Now, I had thought that, you know, because you want to keep the water off your image, really, don't you? So I thought what I'd do is I'd mask inside to create a barrier, but again, as we've seen, it does damage. But actually, I'm going to try the low tack. Because maybe if I'm not pushing it down as much, I'm just using it as a barrier, it'll just be enough to keep the water. So I've only pushed on this side and on that side, but my theory is it'll keep the water off the image, but we'll see that when we take it off at the end. Right, so let's get sponging. So I think this is going to need to get a good soak, and I'm using a square sponge. Because I've seen also, I was looking at some other videos last night, and some artists are taking this paper, scraping it off with credit cards, with knives, and having never used it before, I just assumed it'd come off easy, you know, you wet it again and it'd just slide off like it slid on. So let's see, let's give it a bit of time to soak in. Trying very hard not to get the water into the paper. Right. Move. Oh no, it's starting to move. Yeah. Not much, so try again. I think just go one side at a time. Is that keeping the water? I can see that the water is going under the tape there. You see it's darkened. So that actually sticking the tape there doesn't seem to do much good. And I'm not soaking this paper. I am trying to, you know, be quite careful with it. Well, as careful as one can be. Maybe if we just leave it for a bit, and I'll try another side first. So I'm doing the sides first because they're on top, so if I didn't, I'd be pulling off the underneath one. So keep the water from going into the picture. Spongy sponge bob. Other underwater cartoons are available. I don't even know why I said that, but there we go. We're getting there. I'm sorry I keep bobbing out with a picture here, but that's what we get. You're not looking at me, you're looking at what's going on here. Right, so a bit more water there, so that's soaking through. So yeah, so the theory is that the gum that sticks it down reactivates and it slides around, but it's not looking like it's doing that at all. We got some movement, but nothing. So it's just as well I tried this before I'd actually drawn a lovely wonderful new image on there. So I'm moving you over again. Oh, getting a bit more sort of handsy with the paint. with the water rather. Putting a lot more on there because I think that really needs to soak through. Let's take this off and see if it's. Yes, I'm lifting more ink here now, and that's even longer to dry. So that's not a plan. And my workspace is getting messy, wet. Give it a quick little wipe over. So it looks like I'll be sticking that other roll of gum tape on eBay in the next couple of days. I can't get any more water into that, really. It's fully saturated, I would have thought. Put the water out the way. Oh, see, how does that come off? See, now the important moment is going to be when I hit the paper. Does it lift off the paper? Because if it doesn't lift off the paper, this has all been for naught. Maybe next time I watch those videos that tell me how to do it before. I don't know. It's a lot of effort, but it might be there. Where's this going? Oh. I wonder, you know, what's like with paper when you're stripping wallpaper. Sometimes you get the top layer off, and then you find out what's underneath is actually quite dry. And if you look at this, that looks quite dry, doesn't it? So let's take this. This isn't as satisfying as peeling back the masking tape, but there we go. Is it worth the hassle? I think I might just go back to that old masking tape I used to use when I was a young'un. The cheap stuff, because that's all I ever used to buy was the cheap stuff. Oh, it's coming off quite nice on this side, but not without some bleed through to the paper. And lucky pup. Excuse me, I'm going to have a drink a second. Cheers. Oh, it's better. Thirsty work is talking and doing art. Right, so let's see what this top layer comes off like now. Or the bottom layer. Top layer's off. Let's see what this bottom layer comes off like. I don't think it's going to give me a good line. Let's give that a go over as well. Somehow, I don't think it's going to give me a good line or a good border. So I'm going to have to scratch that other board I've mounted up, and I think we'll have to try some other thing. Now I understand there are other tapes available. There's some draftsman's tape and artist tape. I've never looked at any of them. I've never had any experience with them, but I think I'll have to give them a try, see if they're any good. Do you have any suggestions? Do you know what's best to use for this stuff? You know, there's a comment section down there. Put something in there. Tell me what I should be using. Ideally, I want to keep my paper a whole sheet, not have to cut this out. I want a thin board around the edges, which I get with masking tape. That's what I need to do. Okay, if you can help me with that by suggesting something, I'm all ears. Right, it does seem to come up in layers, doesn't it? Let's see, so we get the top off. This could be a long video. No, it's coming. It's coming. It's like when you get one of those CDs with the sticky label on, that's just the wrong kind of glue. Now look what's happened there. You see? Was that? No, that's actually the tape. It's suppose if you're quite careful with a knife you can get it, but my line there is pretty dull. Oh, it's coming. It's coming. But it won't look good. It won't look tidy with it. That'll look very messy when it's all off. Give me one of those window scrapers really, that'll take it right off. That's not bad, that's not bad. Actually. Because this paper has held really well, which it doesn't always do with masking tape, which is, I think, one of the attractions of using it. If you're happy to cut it out of this paper at the end, then I can see why people use it. But like I say, I like having this board around the edge, and that looks awful because you can just see the knife marks up and down there. And the line's pretty appalling too. Let's get a bit off. Because I'm aware now you're getting bored with this. Don't forget you can use that backwards and forward scrubber thing to jump to interesting bits. Don't listen to me waffle on about paper and tape. Just see the results. Jump to the end. I'm not going to do the whole thing. I just want to see what this one comes up like. Because that was quite a nice, I thought, masked line. Ooh, look, see, we're taking up the paper there. Top layer of the watercolour paper. That doesn't ever look good. And we've also got all this down here. If I work quick like that, you might get to see it all. Right, let's give this. I'm just so glad I didn't actually create a piece before I went away and did this. You know, it could have been heartbreaking. Could have cut it out, yeah, I know, but that's not what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to do. I just assumed it'd be like masking tape and come off. How wrong I was. How wrong I was. See, look, that's a nice line, that one. That's a nice borderline. But try it again. There's no easy way to get that off, is there? Rubbing it doesn't do much cop. I can see it's actually. There we go. So there we have it, folks. If you want a border on your picture, if you want a border, don't do it with this brown tape. Gum tape. So yeah, so I don't know if it'll focus on that. It's too messy, isn't it? And it feels yuck. It's still sticky. That side's not peeling off any better. I can peel it with my nail a bit. And now the ink is running, and that's not nice. Sorry, I'll get that up there where you can see it. So it's had a good soak. Go. Smiley face. Not very smiley face. Where's, have I got a glum face? No, two smiley faces. Need to turn that smile up and see, because stuff's just rubbing through from the picture. So that's not effective, is it? Not effective at all. Right, and it's also left me a nice sticky icky mess on my drawing board. You see that? I put a lot of effort into these drawing boards. I had to buy them, get them shipped, paint them up, couple of coats of wood stain on them, make them nice and waterproof. Several coats. I might just come off with a bit of a scrub. Okay, there we go. Call it a day there. So, moral of the story. If you want to create a border, I know I've already said this. If you want to create a border, don't use the brown tape because you will ruin your picture getting it off. However, I have thought of a workaround here, believe it or not, because the brown gum tape gives you superior paper holding stretchiness to what I've seen so far. And thinking back to when I used to use paper with masking tape, it's giving you good stretch. So there is an alternative, which is brown paper around the edges, then an internal mask using that. So you've got two layers of tape. You've got the brown paper, the brown one holding the thing, and then you just go over the top of it with that to give you your edge on the paper. Because typically when you get an edge like that, it can be quite good. Not now because it's wet. There we go. Okay, I hope that was interesting for you. It certainly was for me. Sorry if I waffled on a bit, but there we go. That's what you've got to put up with. I'll be back, I think maybe tomorrow, but this isn't a recording, so this isn't a live stream. And I'm actually going to finish the this one. Oh, you can see that there. Now, I'm going to finish this one off. Let's switch to the main camera so you can see that. Right, so yeah, so we're going to finish this one off. I've done quite a bit more work on it since the last video. Coming together. Ooh. Ooh. So I'll be finishing off one more session on that, and I'll be taking off that masking tape to see what the borders are like on it. See if I can get a nice border on them. Might just be a case of a ruler and a fine liner, you know. Sometimes I've done that in the past and it works just as well. So there we go. I'll catch you again. Cheers now. Signing out.